feel like Gordon Bombay would have taken his career to even further heights.
Everything's flashy, everything's cocaine, everything's
Fun.
Open wide for some soccer.
I don't care what you think about what your personal thoughts are at home. I care that you hate the Cowboys.
Call this college rule.
Welcome, everybody, to the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris. This is Dom. Just a couple of comics talking sports. Please give all of our socials the follow, the comments, the like. YouTube, Instagram are our two biggest. If you'd like to see an athlete or a team or a whatever, an event, please comment on it or email us. Other than that, man, let's just get right into it. Who are we talking about today?
We're back on the gridiron today, Chris, and we're talking about one of the longest tenured quarterbacks in NFL history, and someone you wouldn't think of.
I was just going to say, he is literally the journeyman of journeymen.
Yep.
So here we go.
Quite the journeyman. Today we're talking about Vinny Testaverde, or as my dad called him, Vinny Greenballs. Vincent Frank Testaverde, born in Brooklyn, New York. To dad Al, a construction worker, mom Josie, and he had four sisters growing up there in New York. As a little boy, he was really into football. His dad really kind of got him into playing football. And since he was such a big kid, his dad would have to bring his birth certificate to all his tryouts because he looked 3 years older than everybody.
I was just going to say, he was one of those oversized kids where he was like 3 or 4 inches bigger than everybody all the time.
Yeah.
And that's why I bet football was so fun when you were younger. You know what I mean?
Just
When
running over people.
just like, no, I'll play offense and defense. No, it's fine.
So you know, Rudy, this is the exact opposite of that. He grew up in Elmont on Long Island. Went to Sewanhaka High School, but he did not start as a quarterback until his senior year.
Yeah.
Which I thought was crazy. It said as a junior, in the final game of the season, he was playing wide receiver. He threw a touchdown off a lateral pass to win the Nassau County Championship. And as a senior, even though he started in a run-first veer offense, which is like the option, he still threw for almost 700 yards. So you're thinking, okay, this is a D1 prospect at quarterback. He could go to like Penn State, Boston College, a lot of D1 schools. But his grades aren't very good.
And this is something that
Oh, boy.
plagues him for his entire career.
Yep.
He's a bit of a knucklehead.
A little bit of a knucklehead. School's not his first priority.
I was just going to say, he is such the 80s jock.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, my God. He's 6'4". He's giving all the nerds wedgies.
200 pounds. He's putting the jock strap over the one guy's face. Do you know karate?
Do you know karate? No. Okay.
So because his grades were not good and not really interested in school, he couldn't get into any D1 program. So he decides to, basically boost his recruiting stock because you can take a post-grad year, and he goes to the famous Fork Union Military Academy in Virginia.
So now this is where I think might be the best move of his entire career.
Oh, totally.
Where he, like you said earlier, he literally had 1 year playing quarterback and his grades were garbage. And he was just like, I'm going to go focus in on my grades so I'm eligible to at least get into a party school. But also that extra year of development on quarterback was so, I feel like, what he needed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Just like the time of because 1 year of high school quarterback is not a lot.
Yeah.
So just going to the military academy and like having that extra year coming in, I think was very important.
He said, Army school helped me in a lot of ways. I learned how to fold my clothes and make my bed.
Yep.
Learned the discipline, and because of his success there, he gets into the party school, Chris. The University of Miami, as they are building a Death Star in 1982.
And I was going to say, this is Miami in the 80s.
The fun Miami.
So this is the Miami Vice 80s.
This is Don Johnson in pastels and a white suit.
Type 80s.
Type 80s. 82, he plays a little bit, kind of sparingly, back up to Jim Kelly in his senior year. So this is the run when Miami had like 6 or 7 straight NFL quarterbacks.
I was just going to say, him included is, you're like, oh, he backed up Jim Kelly the first year, and you're just like, all right, who's next? Like, it's a fun run of 80s cocaine quarterbacks.
Yes, it is. In 1983, he almost beat out the starter, Bernie Kosar, who was a redshirt freshman for the starting job. Unfortunately for him, head coach Howard Schnellenberger thought Kosar was much more ready to play, and they just essentially iced Vinny for the season to use the redshirt, which, when we look down the road, was a very good decision by the program.
Yep.
In 83, all that happens is Miami wins the Orange Bowl and the national championship. with him on the bench.
It was a really great move.
Yeah, it was very smart.
Saying that he wasn't as prepared as Kosar was just kind of accurate in this time.
Yeah. 1984, they have a new head coach. Schnellenberger leaves for the USFL. Jimmy Johnson.
Jimmy J.
We've discussed him in some previous episode. At this point, Testaverde thinks about transferring because Kosar is already an immediate star for Miami. And only a redshirt sophomore. So basically, you may get 1 year of playing time if that happens. Luckily, after the season ends, Kosar decides to enter the supplemental draft in 1985 because he has 3 years he's had 3 years outside of high school, and he's also essentially graduated. He already earned his undergrad degree, so he enters a supplemental draft, which is awesome for Vinny.
I was going to say it is because transferring in this time is not great. He would have to take a year off. There's
no transfer portal.
There's no transfer portal. So like Kosar literally going into the NFL draft right here opens up it. Because you're right, it could have been 1 year, but it was 2 years to show everybody that he was a starting quarterback.
And mind you, at this time, he's becoming just a freak in the weight room. Like, even though he's not playing, he's basically Ivan Dragoing himself into just an absolute stud of a human being.
Well, I think sometimes that helps not playing because he's not dealing with injury, so he can literally work out for 2 years straight. So you're right, because he becomes what you want in a quarterback, which is what you were saying, 6'4", 200 pounds, all muscle. And you're just like, all right, goddamn. Because he was quick, too.
Yeah, he wasn't like John Elway, but he had mobility to escape the pocket and make throws down the field. Like he's not like your typical, he's not Michael Vick, I guess is the best way to say it.
Yeah.
But he has mobility and good footwork. 1985, his first year as a starter was fantastic. Team goes 10-2. Throws for just over 3,200 yards and 21 touchdowns. They were the only team to beat Oklahoma that year. And you know which game that was?
No.
The one that got Troy Aikman to transfer.
Oh.
The one where he got hurt in.
Interesting.
Vinny was the quarterback in that game.
Wow. Spiderwebs.
This is the Spiderweb podcast. Oklahoma, who won the national title that year.
Yeah.
He finished 5th in the Heisman Trophy voting. And he's still got another season to play. And had this season ended differently, we might be talking about the 86 Hurricanes as the greatest college football team ever because they were dominant and Vinny was the quarterback on the best damn team in college football. They go 11-0 in 1986. That season, he
wins the Heisman.
Yeah, wins the Heisman Trophy. 26 touchdowns passing, and they play in the 87 Fiesta Bowl
against Penn State.
And a certain defensive coordinator, who we won't talk about, had a very good defensive plan to stop Vinny and Miami's high-powered offense.
This is the first glimmer. This is like the foreshadowing of what people say is his big problem in the NFL, or his detractor of being like one of the greatest quarterbacks of his time. Is we see him go into this Fiesta Bowl and throw 5 interceptions.
And they're not like tip balls.
No,
these
they're
are like hitting guys in the numbers interceptions. Yeah. Like they're not good. They're not. Even though he just has 5 interceptions, they only give up 14 points.
Yeah,
and they still lose 14-10.
Well, that's what people were saying was Miami was such a better football team, but they almost got out-coached.
Yes,
because it really, like you were saying, it really was like he's going to throw the ball right here. Be there. He's not going to even be looking for you, and it was such a glaring mistake for him as a quarterback.
Yeah, and I mean, not only for him as a quarterback, but that is your, like, last performance before the NFL takes you.
Yep.
You know, that's where it's the worst possible time to do it, but it doesn't affect him too much because he's 6'4", 220, runs a 4.75 40, has huge 10-inch hands, which means he's probably bigger downstairs than Shaquille O'Neal.
Whoa.
And he's going to be the number 1 pick in the 87 draft.
I mean, you got a quarterback like this, you can't pass on him.
Yeah, there were other guys. I think Jim Harbaugh was a first-round pick this year. And then we did another episode on a guy in this draft, Sterling Sharp. Check that one out, everybody. He was a top 10 pick. So, unfortunately for Vinny, and this is what this is kind of mirrors the Tim Couch stuff we talked about, where it doesn't matter how good you are. If you go to an absolute wasteland of a franchise, there's no hope. there's absolutely no hope. So if you weren't familiar, he's taken number 1 overall by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a franchise who did not sign their previous year's number 1 overall pick, Bo Jackson, because they tried to screw him out of playing baseball in college.
Well, and they get this reputation of being a horrible franchise. So you have free agents that don't want to come. They can't really build the offense.
Their owner was a cheap bastard
Yep.
in Hugh Culverhouse. From 1983 to 1996, this team missed the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
Not even the recent Browns did this. This was like... This is the sad Bucks of this era.
This is the dregs.
In those creamsicle uniforms. Selling popcorn in the instructional league. So he goes to Tampa Bay in 87. And this is also another... You know why they drafted him number 1? Because they had just ruined Steve Young and sent him to San Francisco.
Oh, yes. I did read about this.
That's why they're drafting Vinny.
And this is literally what they were saying. Like, they could have had some of the best players because it was literally like first round pick, back to back. And they literally just shot themselves in the foot because they had to take Vinny.
Shot themselves in the foot. They shot themselves in the dick. You could have had Bo Jackson and Steve Young.
Oh, my God. Yes.
It's like abandon all hope, ye who enter here. So he goes to a team without a lot of good players. 87 is the strike year. And he goes 0-4 and throws for a 43% completion percentage. Mind you, he is running for his life.
Yes.
And it's not necessarily it's his fault, but it's not his fault. It's like the Tim Couch thing. You just feel bad for him.
Well, yeah, because he is coming in as a rookie, so obviously he's not going to be as like shapely, or you know what I mean, as like seasoned as he should be. But they were talking about these 4 games. They were just chasing him all over the field. Like, he had no O-line. It was just like, oh my God.
You can just hear, oh God, make it stop.
Yes.
Oh, so 88, his first year as a starter. He goes 5-10, which is not particular. Another under 48% completion percentage. Did throw for 3,240 yards and 13 touchdowns. But you know how many picks he had?
35.
That's more than 2 times a game.
Which is the second highest in NFL history.
And he was sacked 33 times. I did want to bring that. In 15 games, you're sacked 33 times.
It's brutal.
You're getting Kurt Russelled in imagination land, this poor bastard. 89-90, it's no better. Goes 11-16 between the 2 seasons. Is over 50% completion percentage. Passes for almost 6,000 yards. And he's starting to cut his interceptions down. Mm-hmm. So between these 2 years, he has 37 TDs and 40 interceptions. But he had 22 of them in 89 to lead the league and sacked 38 times each season. And now we start getting to, it's bad enough when your team and yourself are completely failing, but it's another when fans and people in public start talking garbage about you.
I was just going to say the fan base was obviously horrified as to what was happening with their team, because it wasn't even like there was any kind of effort. You know what I mean? It was more like, yeah, we're going to lose, and we're going to lose for a decade. So who is the first round pick? Who's the starting quarterback? Obviously, Vinny's going to be taking a lot of this brunt. And we see stuff, or the brunt of this, we see stuff that we just don't see in sports anymore.
It's downright mean.
Just mean personal attacks.
Yes.
Which, God, we're just missing it.
They were making fun of him due to, he was colorblind. Vinny's colorblind.
He's colorblind.
So they even erected a billboard in Tampa Bay that said, hey, Vinny, the sign is orange. It was blue.
It was blue.
Vinny thinks this sign is orange. It's blue.
It's blue behind him.
Yeah.
Another one was in this era, one of the commentators were caught. So like
Gene Upshaw, of all people.
In between, so like they went to commercial break and he didn't realize that his satellite conversation for people that didn't get those commercials were still going. And he proceeds to say that
this is
our
some
boy
spice.
This
is a roast, dude. This is a music box roast.
Yeah, seriously, though, because he's just like literally saying how stupid he is and how much better of a quarterback than he would be. He was an O-lineman.
He was a Hall of Fame offensive guard. Don't get me wrong. But, you got to play next to Art Shell, another Hall of Famer for a decade plus. Vinny has popsicle sticks, tape, and glue in front of him as an offensive line. He said Vinny is so dumb, he would drag an electric cord through the swimming pool to trim the hedges, which is just
Brutal.
oh, God. You're thinking, I'm a hotshot coming out of Miami, staying in Florida. And then this is when players should have just stopped, like refused to report, not even sign with Tampa after what happened.
After this, yeah.
Like, that's just horrendous. 91 and 92 kind of have some injuries start piling up. Goes 3-9 and 91, 8 touchdowns to 15 picks, 35 sacks. That year he started losing playing time to a guy we talked about in a previous episode, Chris Chandler.
Oh, yeah.
For that Falcons Vikings game.
But we see that he's getting injured, but he's also improving his interceptions, but he's getting sacked so much. It's ridiculous.
And I should note, this is how stupid Tampa Bay was. They traded their number 1 pick, which I think was either number 1 or number 2 the following season, to Indianapolis.
Oh, yeah.
For Chandler. So 92, he goes 5-9, 2,554 yards, 14 TDs, 16 picks, which is good. Another 2 rushing touchdowns. Again, sacked 35 times, and by that point, the team's looking to replace him. The 6-year experiment is over. They're going to actually use another former Miami quarterback in Craig Erickson. So, heading into 93, Vinny needs a change of scenery, and he gets a helping hand in 1993 by someone who not a lot of people think is a very nice guy, and a franchise.
That stopped becoming a franchise and became a franchise again.
Yeah.
So he's an unrestricted free agent.
Yeah.
After 6 years with Tampa, and he ends up signing for Cleveland Browns.
March 31st, 1993.
With and this is the I didn't give him this nickname. This is the nickname that the uncircumcised penis of the NFL, Bill Belichick, brings him in. I didn't give him that nickname. I'm saying that was,
I mean, when you look at that hood at all time, although he's kind of got a little stuff shorn off the sides with the sleeves.
I'm just saying, when the hood gets taken down, that's when you know it's time to fuck.
That's when you know it's extra pleasure, Chris, when the hood gets taken down.
So he goes to the Browns and ends up backing up again.
Bernie Kosar. But here's the thing. Belichick is not a huge fan of Kosar's salary and where he's at in his career. Belichick brings in Vinny, obviously, to back him up, and which is great because Cleveland is starting to build a decent team, number 1, so he's not going to get murdered behind an offensive line. He's just experienced the football version of PTSD, so you get to back up a Pro Bowler in Bernie Kosar. But you might get some reps if you're Vinny. And by the middle of 1993, as we brought up in our Aikman episode, Bernie Kosar is released by Cleveland. Ends up going to Dallas. So Vinny's the guy towards the end of 93 in Cleveland.
Well, I would be interested to know the conversations that they had of being like, this position will probably open up in the next year. So if you come in and be a backup this year, you know what I mean? Like, because he does go, what would people would think would be in his prime to be a backup at the Browns, but then immediately becomes, like, not immediately, like halfway through their season, becomes their starter. And if we look at it,
he does a good job in 93 because he goes 3-3, has 14 touchdowns and 9 picks and just under 1,800 yards. So this is the first time in his career he has more touchdowns than interceptions.
Yes.
He's in year 7. This poor bastard.
But that's what we see. Finally, he gets a team around him. 94, they actually have a good record.
I remember this team. They were actually really good.
I'm sure your boys beat them.
Well, they beat him 3 times. In 13 starts, he goes 9-4. The team goes 11-5. 55.1% completion percentage, 16 touchdowns. Well, he has 18 picks. He's got almost 2,600 yards, and he takes them to the playoffs. They win one of the AFC wild cards, which is amazing, and they go to play someone he'll be associated with down the road, the New England Patriots. They get a home playoff game, and Bill Parcells. And on January 1st, 1995, I did want to bring this up because I watched this game. He played really well. 20 of 30 for 268 yards and a touchdown and no picks. And they beat another guy we did an episode on in Drew Bledsoe. How about those spider webs? 20-13.
But you're right, where he stepped up in this first playoff game. Where you're kind of thinking, you're like, oh, this is the quarterback that everybody saw coming out of college that was like had all the potential, and Tampa Bay just kind of
This is not someone that was sent to the version of hell in the NFL.
Yes.
In 1987. They do play the following week in Pittsburgh and get blanked 29-0. But heading into 95, you thought I think Sports Illustrated that year picked them to go to the Super Bowl. They signed Andre Rison.
Yes. A lot of people saw this team as, and this is sometimes that happens in sports too, where you're just like, ooh, all this is going to come together, and it comes together like shit. And it was, you see them go 5-11, and
the crappy part is a lot of those 11 losses were mid-season when Art Modell told everybody he was moving the team.
Yes.
He wasn't going to sell to anyone in Cleveland. He was going to move them to Baltimore.
I was just going to say, so it was like a third of the way through the season where he was just like, so we're not going to be here next year, and everyone was just like,
and the thing was,
to be a player, it must have been so fucking weird.
I saw this documentary, The Football Life on 95 Cleveland, and like players not knowing what to do with the condos that they rented. And things it was just a total shit show. That year, Vinny had a 61.5 completion percentage. I didn't want to bring that up because he got more accurate and less turnover prone over the course. Like, the Tampa shit should just be wiped. It exists, but like, that's not a good indicator. 17 touchdowns, 10 picks, over 2,800 yards. Unfortunately, he only went 4-8 in those 12 starts, and he started losing playing time to Eric Zaire. So, 96, he's not in Cleveland anymore, along with the rest of his team. He makes the trip to Baltimore. And my God, does he have the season of seasons for the Ravens.
And this is the season that I feel like a lot of people point to that they're just kind of like, those were the numbers that he probably could have put up if he went to wherever, you know, wherever that wasn't Tampa Bay in this era, because he literally, 4,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, and only 19 interceptions. This is the what we see, you know what I mean, is the interceptions finally dropped to like a
reasonable level.
Yes.
Like, and Vinny's a strong arm guy. He takes a lot of chances as far as gunning it down the field. And this is still not the air raid pass happy offenses we see today. These are like, deeper and intermediate routes that are difficult to complete. That year he makes his first Pro Bowl. He was even excellent on the ground. I had read him scrambling out of the pocket because they had no running backs at that point.
Oh, yeah.
So that he was one of their best running threats that year. He actually scored the first touchdown in Baltimore Ravens history. I didn't want to bring that up. So a little spider web there, I guess.
Well, it was a little running touchdown. So that was cool, because you wouldn't think that. It wasn't a passing touchdown. It was literally him sneaking it in. So
following season, and he signs a 4-year extension, restructured extension after this year. So you're thinking, okay, the Ravens have their guy. Hooray. 97, not so good. He goes 4-8-1. Eric Zaire is again coming in and out of the lineup to replace him. Although he has almost 3,000 yards and more touchdowns and interceptions, their defense, this is as they're getting the young pieces, Baltimore, but they're not there yet. Their defenses were horrendous these 2 seasons that Vinny was there with them. Unfortunately, because of the decline in play, he was released from his contract after the season.
I feel like this happens a lot, too, where they signed Jim Harbaugh and they were just like, that contract just isn't worth it. It's almost like the Bernie Kosar, where you're just kind of like, it was too big for what we signed.
I'm always interested to know if they had kept him through like 2000 when they were like
really good,
stacked on D.
Yeah,
like maybe their offense would have been a hell of a lot better. Who knows? They would.
No, you really don't know if they actually would have stuck with this contract and been like, you're our guy. But yeah, they.
So he's without a team in midsummer. He's not one of those guys that's released, off the bat and snapped up immediately.
Yep.
Takes till June 24th, 1998, and he signs with his favorite team growing up, which is almost a form of child abuse, the New York Jets.
That's right, because he grew up in New York. Coming into this season, I don't think a lot of people were giving him.
Well, he came in to be a backup to Glenn Foley. He was not the starter. He was not projected to be the starter, but he had 2 friends on that staff in head coach Bill Parcells and uncircumcised penis defensive coordinator Bill Belichick.
That's correct.
After a rough start to the season for the Jets, including Foley being injured, it's Vinny's job. And what does he do, Chris? But have probably his greatest season as a professional football player.
I was just going to say, he statistically, as we're saying it, like, and you wonder how good he would have been under some good coaching, because he literally has 29 touchdowns and 7 interceptions, which is the biggest detractor that people say about him, like getting into the Hall of Fame. They're just like, look at all those interceptions.
I think Terry Bradshaw had 2 more touchdowns and interceptions in his career.
Yeah.
Because the beginning of his career in Pittsburgh was a lot like Vinny's in Tampa Bay.
Yes.
He goes 12-1 in the 13 games he starts for him. The Jets win the AFC. I wanted to say this because it surprised the hell out of even me because I figured they would have stole one at some point. It was the first time they won the AFC East since the NFL merger in 1970. Not even Broadway Joe did that.
It's pretty sad.
I mean, hello, darkness, my old friend. Jesus, Jets. Oh, my God. 61.5% completion percentage, almost 3,300 yards. I mean, this was his season.
Yes.
They had the Vinny and the Jets thing rolling. I mean, they had a great defense coached by Grumbledore. I mean, they got the number 2 seed. They got a first-round bye this year. And Vinny's a huge reason why.
Yes.
Rolls into the playoffs January 10th, 1999 to play Jacksonville. Who won the AFC Central that year. They come out hot. He has a great game, 24-36, 284 yards, a TD, and a pick, and they win 34-24. Unfortunately for them, they have to go play the defending Super Bowl champions in Denver, who had just won. I think Denver was 14-2 that year.
Yeah.
I mean, they were we talked about it in the LA episode. They were really good. They go there, and then in the third quarter, the Jets are somehow nursing a 10-0 lead. Then Denver scores to make it 10-7. Then our boy Jason Elam from our Hawaii episode has a knuckling kickoff. It's fumbled. Denver gets the ball back.
Go on to win.
They scored 23 points in a row, and Vinny had 2 picks. Over 300 yards in the game, but 2 picks. And
I was going to say he kind of fell apart in the end, but literally, if you watch this, the Jets fall apart at the end.
It's the jetsiest Jets thing since the Jets ever jetsed this
Because
AFC title game.
For 2.5 quarters, they literally held the Broncos to nothing and then let them do whatever they wanted for about a quarter.
I distinctly remember. I don't think I've ever rooted for the Jets harder in any game ever. And it was just like, what was it? The Artie Lang quote. You know, when I was a kid, I was really into girls. Then I got into the Jets. Then I got into girls, and then I got into the Jets because with women, you know, most of the time they will never fuck you, but the Jets will always fuck you.
Yeah, that's so true.
Because it's go, Artie. He was supposed to keep driving. 99, much like 95 in Cleveland, there's hype for the Jets. You got Vinny coming back. A stacked team already there. You've signed Steve Atwater away from Denver. You're making that postseason push. And dear God, if this franchise wasn't built on an Indian burial ground.
Because, man, it was 2 minutes into the first quarter. He punches Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in the face, breaks his hand. But this is literally like what you see where like all of this hype goes up. And I think it's the second quarter of the first game.
And they're winning. They're beating New England. And what happens, Chris?
He ruptures his Achilles tendon, and he's out for the entire season.
So, that's horrible. One interesting sports fact, you can look this up. I think their backup was hurt, but I do remember this game. The Jets used Tom Tupa, who was a quarterback at Ohio State, but he was a Pro Bowl punter, and that was his position. They used Tom Tupa to play in this game for like over a half of football. Yeah. So 99, the Jets suck. I mean, they finished 8-8, but I think they started like 1-6, and after that year, Parcells retires. Heading into 2000, because Vinny, I believe he's 36. So yeah, he was born in 63. So he is 36, 37 years old. This is the year 37 season. In the 2000 draft, they take Chad Pennington out of Marshall to back him up. Vinny's the starter this year. They go 9-7. Although they missed the playoffs, he has almost 3,800 yards passing and 21 touchdowns, and has 4 fourth quarter comebacks. this
I was
year.
going to say, this is the comeback kid year where he has the Monday Night Miracle.
Yeah, what do you want to talk about? Well, I want to talk about that because
Yeah.
that's pretty awesome. If you're not familiar, October 23rd, 2000, Monday Night Football, where we have Dennis Miller doing the Monday Night Football at this juncture.
Still one of the weirdest. Whatever.
Didn't make any sense. They're playing the Miami Dolphins at the Meadowlands, and they're down 30-7 going into the fourth quarter. Vinny has played like garbage almost the entire game. In this fourth quarter, he throws 4 touchdowns. It's one of the most bizarre quarters in NFL history with just what happens, how the Jets just march down the field every time they get the ball. It's crazy.
And he also throws them to different receivers.
Yeah.
Which you're like, yeah. Because like you were saying, they march it down, and it's not like one guy that he's just going to. He's like airing it out to everybody. And then they proceed to beat the Dolphins 40-37.
One of the touchdowns was to an offensive tackle.
Oh, yes.
On a tackle-eligible play, Jumbo Elliott. I mean, it's crazy.
Jumbo.
They win in overtime. Unfortunately, their 9-7 record doesn't allow them to get into the playoffs. 2001, they're a wild card team. Vinny has a great season as far as 5 fourth-quarter comebacks and 5 game-winning drives. He's clutch when he needs to be. Mm-hmm. They go 10-6. They has almost 2,800 passing yards, 15 touchdowns. Unfortunately for them, they lose in the wild card to the Raiders.
Yep.
In the black hole. And by 2002, after a 1-3 start, he's out as a starter.
And Chad Pennington's ready to take over, and you could see him as this veteran quarterback that still has value in developing young quarterbacks.
Not only that, the stories he can tell from Tampa, my God, that's just like, back in my day.
Well, that's why they say he ends up joining the Cowboys, is to develop Quincy Carter, who promptly gets kicked off the team for drugs.
Yeah, so
allegedly
backs up Pennington for 2 seasons in 2002, 2003. Though he does play a significant portion in 2003. He has to start the first 6 games of that season because Pennington's hurt.
Forgot about
7
that.
touchdowns, 2 picks, even though he goes 2-5, but he still has value, and he's 40 years old.
Yes.
Which, good for you, Vinny Greenballs. Keep that career going. So, June 3rd, 2004, like you said, Quincy Carter just took him to the playoffs. You need an old man. Bill Parcells is the new head coach in Dallas.
Gets talked out of retirement by
the tuna?
The most respectful owner in the entire.
The owner.
Well, that's what they were saying was he brings him out of retirement.
Yeah.
He goes and he says, "Look, Vinny would be a great backup quarterback that we can rely on, but also develop Quincy." And then I think they said it was like 2 or 3 weeks after they signed him, he gets busted allegedly for a failed drug test, Quincy Carter, and kicked off the team, thus making
Vinny
our boy
the starter.
the starter.
At 41 years old. So, while he leads the league with 20 picks, to throw for over 3,500 yards and 17 touchdowns, and this is an era where no one was playing over 40.
Oh,
now
yeah.
you see it so much more often.
No.
This was not, an era where guys did this. He had his passing yards were the 3rd most in a season in Cowboys history. He tied a franchise record with 3. These are all then franchise records.
Yeah.
300 passing yards games in a season. And he was the 5th quarterback to pass for over 300 yards in NFL history at over 40 years old. And he also was there mentoring another young quarterback instead of Quincy Carter.
That's right. So the 3rd stringer, who becomes the 2nd stringer, who becomes the most annoying announcer ever.
Apparently he can see the future, everybody. And that's a tall order considering what a douche canoe Jim Nance is.
Tony Romo gets the development that Quincy Carter should have gotten, and you see him become a starting quarterback at Dallas for the next,
Decade or so.
horrible decade
Oh,
they had.
God. The annoying decade where they still won nothing, Chris. Wasn't that nice?
That was great. Back to the Jets.
Cowboys.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. No, I mean after that season.
Oh, yeah. So he's not signed because Parcells brings in Drew Bledsoe.
And this is what we see with these quarterbacks where
Musical chairs?
yes, it is literally like musical chairs because Bledsoe comes in literally as almost the exact same guy as almost like elder backup quarterback. So he goes back to his favorite team.
I'm going to bring something up when we talk about the stats of Vinny Testaverde to prove he is not of this planet, okay? And it's related to this team he signs with again.
Yep.
2005, the Jets, signs in September after Chad Pennington and Jay Fiedler are injured. He goes 1-3 as a starter. He's 42. And on December 26, 2005, on Monday Night Football, a 27-yard TD pass to Lavernius Coles from Vinny has him set the record, because Tom Brady just dream smashes. The most consecutive seasons with a touchdown pass at 19. That's ridiculous.
Especially saying because, like, in those first seasons, they were doubting whether or not he was going to get a TD pass because Tampa Bay was so bad.
Oh, yeah. Bad.
But 19 consecutive seasons.
In that game, I did want to bring up, because they're playing the Patriots, Doug Flutie also played in this game.
Oh, yeah.
It was meaningless for New England as far as, they've already clinched a playoff berth. They put Doug Flutie in, and it is the first game in NFL history where two quarterbacks over 40 completed a pass. I think stuff like that is cool.
Oh, I love that.
Like, is it big in the grand scheme? No, but that's just like a cool little tidbit.
Yes.
2006, he decides to sign with New England. And Bill Belichick brings him back. And then on December 31st, a touchdown pass to Troy Brown gives him 20 straight seasons with a touchdown pass.
He's backing up little Timmy Brady right now.
Timmy Brady.
And you see him just as that second string quarterback that I feel like a lot of teams desire, that you can trust and be almost like a quarterback coach.
He's seen the best and the worst of the NFL.
Yes.
He keeps himself in fantastic physical shape. I mean, as far as being able
43.
to play.
Yeah,
I know. But I mean, this dates back to even when he's at Miami.
Yeah. Seriously.
And you know what? Kind of like we talked about in Kenny Lofton, the Kenny Lofton episode. Just a nice guy.
Yeah, he is.
Not a
He really
dick.
is.
Not a dick. I just don't like school. And you know what, Vinny? Nobody really likes school.
But that's why I feel like a lot of teams pick him up this late, is sometimes people, their egos are too big to be backups. They're not going to help develop young guys. That's like they were saying, like, he really was a nice guy that you wanted to have on your team. It was like all of that shit that you're just like, we're going to bring him back at 43.
And if you can make guys like Belichick and Parcells like you, I mean, that's a talent in and of itself.
Ladies, if you can make an uncircumcised penis like you, you are green balls in my book.
Green balls and ham. So in 2007...
I thought this was interesting. He actually did sign a 1-year contract with the Patriots, but then they ended up releasing him.
Yeah, he could have been on that 18-1 team.
Yes, I know. That's what I was...
That game was like the Miami-Penn State of the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, that really was. Damn Giants. Oh. But he signs October 10th after being released in September by New England by the Carolina Panthers. And October 14th of that year, Jake Delhomme is out with an elbow injury. So Vinny starts that game and gets a 65-yard TD to Steve Smith Sr. now, which makes it 21 straight seasons with a touchdown pass. So say what you will about his career in Tampa. That's some consistency, Chris.
It really is. And I love the fact that this TD was a bomb, which just kind of... I just love it.
Oh, it's fantastic. And then the following week, they beat the Cardinals 25-10. So at age 43, he's the oldest quarterback to start and win in the NFL until Tom Brady.
Yep.
Another interesting elderly thing. November 18th, 2007, they go play the Packers at Lambeau Field. Vinny's 44 now. Brett Favre is 38. And they called the game the Senior Bowl, and it was the oldest starting quarterback duo in NFL history for a game. And on December 2nd, 2007, he's the second oldest quarterback in NFL history at 44 years, 19 days. And 2 TD passes in a win over the 49ers, and broke the record for oldest starter to win a game in the NFL. His last game against, oddly enough, it came full circle.
Yep. Against the Bucks.
Against the
Buccaneers. So I love that stuff where literally the game he retires on is the team that took him first round. And now they're looking, this is how long he played, was he played through the Buccaneers being the worst franchise, and now they're almost like a mediocre franchise at this point.
Yeah.
Where you're just kind of like, I bet looking at that, you're like, I wish you guys just had that much shit together when I was here. Like,
Could you be 8-8?
Yeah,
I would
that's
have
all.
enjoyed that. I mean, I wouldn't have complained. So, Vinny, now bring up his stats. 21
Yes.
seasons. He has more touchdown passes than a number of Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Yes.
275, though his 267 interceptions are not particularly good, but over 46,000 passing yards, 46,233. He attempted over 6,700 passes. He played forever.
Yeah.
One thing I did want to bring up about his career record, he had a winning record of 35-26 with the New York Jets. That does not happen a lot. You might rank him in the top 5 quarterbacks in that franchise history just based on the 5 or so seasons he played with them. Won the Heisman Trophy in 1986, National Championship in 83 on the bench there. Florida Sports Hall of Fame 2006, College Football Hall of Fame 2013, and the Long Island Sports Hall of Fame in 1987.
And really should be in the NFL Hall of Fame just for his consistency and longevity in the game. Like, that's, yeah.
The guy played in 3 different decades. Mm-hmm. A lot of years in 3 different decades. I mean, you win 90 games in the NFL considering what you were placed into. That's pretty darn good. So, Vinny Testaverde, everybody.